All right, everybody, welcome to your weekly installment of Why I Binge Drink, also known as the AFC Northcast. Joined here, as always, with wonderful co-hosts Chad
Heyo.
and Joey,
Hola.
representing some winners in the division. So this is going to be...
Someone has to.
Yeah, somebody has to. I know how tough it is. So this week we're going to be going over NFL Week 13. This is the review of NFL Week 13. A lot of stuff going on, man. A lot of playoff pictures changing, wild card contention, potential Super Bowl matchup. I don't know, man. It's a pretty exciting week if you ask me. It was also Thanksgiving week too, so hopefully everybody had a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, related to Thanksgiving, I wasn't on the podcast on Friday and I was traveling, and I didn't realize until I was driving home on Saturday that I didn't put any of my picks in for Thursday.
Yeah.
Because I'm the worst.
Yeah. I actually put my pick in for Thursday for the first game. Well, I did all of them, but for some reason it didn't save. So then, like, when I went to go check my picks halfway through the game, I realized it. So I didn't get credit for the first game of the Bears and Detroit. So, but whatever. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because I was so much better than everybody this week.
That is true. Chad definitely won this week in the pick'ems with 11 correct. It was a weird week,
So
man.
many.
A lot of
So many.
a lot of strange.
To be fair,
Games.
I had 8 correct, and I would have had all 3 of the Thursday games. BTW.
Wow.
That's pretty
what
easy
a-
to say in hindsight, huh?
Bills, Bills, Saints. It was not hard to pick.
I can tell a lot of stories about things I would have done.
Yeah. All right. What are you drinking, Chad?
I am drinking Frequency Vibration. It's a double Gosa with raspberry from Burlington
Gross.
Beer Company. If you like tart beers, a little bit of fruit, a little bit of sour, light but still have flavor. It's good. It's going to be a good beer for you.
If by tart you mean the taste when you like vomit in your mouth and re-swallow it, that's kind of what a Goza is.
Nope, I would call that acidic, and this does not taste like vomit at all. Again, for people that generally like those types of beers, this is going to be very far afield from the taste of vomit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. It's a familiar taste to me on Sundays, so. But anyways, let's talk about, I guess, a little bit of news. Nothing really AFC North. Well, apparently some breaking major news from in the AFC North, Joey. What you got?
Well, today the Ravens locked up fullback Patrick Ricard until 2021.
Wow.
Those of you who actually
Razzle
listen
dazzle.
when Chad and I speak on the podcast are familiar with Patrick Ricard. His total snaps this year are 231 on offense, 127 on defense. He is the last of a dying breed in the NFL. He plays both ways with pretty consistent regularity. He's actually played on defense more than I ever expected him to this year because of injuries and just lack of depth and things like that. But he's a big part of the power run game that the Ravens run. And now it means that him and Nick Boyle are locked up for 2 more seasons after this one. So it's good news for the Ravens.
It's tough, to sell people that don't love hard-nosed football on this signing. But for fans of the Browns and the Steelers and the Bengals for most of this year, signings like this are awesome for a team that has an identity. The other 3 teams in the AFC North have been looking for an offensive identity throughout the year. And once you have it, those role players can be critical. So I'm sure the Ravens and most Ravens fans are all very excited. Patrick Ricard is also probably their most fun player to watch in the preseason because he just gets so many snaps. He gets to do everything, and he is better than all the people that he's playing against. So he gets like 20 sacks during the preseason. It's really fun.
Preseason legend, Patrick Ricard.
Oh yeah. Can you be in the preseason Hall of Fame? He's in there, right?
All right, what else? What else is going on?
Old Riverboat Ron has played his last hand in Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, losing at home after getting out to like a 14-0 lead to the Washington Redskins will do that to you.
Yeah.
He's had a rough year. Last year was a rough year. They started like 7-1 and lost the last 8 down the stretch or something like that. So it's probably about time. He had a good long run in Carolina, and when they went to the Super Bowl, it looked like they were building something that may sustain long term, and injury, luck, or whatever it was, they weren't able to really sustain anything. And so his time was up. I don't think Carolina fans are mad about it. But yeah.
Yeah, one of our North Carolina buddies was happy with it. So
Yeah, I think the sentiment is mostly that it was time.
Right.
Time for a change.
Yeah, I feel like he's been on the hot seat like 1 out of every 3 years since I was in college, which was a while ago. So I was surprised that he was fired this week because I feel like I was like, what did he do this time? You know, oh, he lost. He lost a bad game. Like, he survived that so many times before that I was just like, okay, I guess he doesn't even have his starting quarterback. I thought this was a gimme, you know, like he was just going to cruise on through. But he'll land somewhere as a, what is he? He's
defensive coordinator.
Any ideas?
Somewhere. Nah, maybe where'd he go to college? Maybe he'll go back to college for a little while. Just take it easy, make a couple million a year to be smarter than everybody on the staff. Chill. Yeah. Everybody will just love him unconditionally.
Maybe. Perhaps. All right, any other interesting news y'all want to hit on?
Now let's get to these games. There's some good stuff to talk about.
All right, well let's start off with the Bengals and the Jets. The Bengals get their first victory, and a man finally is able to step down from the roof. Has anyone looked that story up yet? We should really be looking that story up, man.
I mean, he came off the roof.
What are you talking about?
The guy that was on the roof.
Yeah, but there's nothing interesting to go with it, man.
I think the most interesting part of the story was when he was on the roof.
Yeah, they won. It's over.
Yeah, so the Cincinnati Bengals defeated the New York Jets 22-6. 6. They demolished them. This game was close ever so briefly. And the Bengals aren't going to run away from anybody, so it actually felt close for like the whole first half. And I don't really get why the Jets were so bad. Like, they got the ball first, and they actually looked pretty good to me. Like, the Bengals tried all sorts of crazy stuff on defense this week. They were doing crazy things. They had a lineup at one point, according to the Locked On Bengals podcast, where they had 4 defensive tackles on the line. They had I didn't notice that, but I noticed Sam Hubbard, one of their edge rushers, defending tight ends in coverage like 3 times on the opening drive.
I noticed that as well.
You know why I noticed it? Because he's bad. He's very bad at that. And he missed those coverages, and they had a lot of completions.
He was taking angles to make the tackle like before the pass was thrown. Like there was one play where the tight end was in the flat and Hubbard was on him, and Hubbard was drifting downfield already to like try to get the angle on him.
What a mess. And you know, that first drive basically ended when Robbie Anderson like maybe should have caught a deep touchdown pass. I thought he was dominating whoever was guarding him all game. He didn't catch that one. They kicked a field goal. And that's like all they did well. Le'Veon Bell mostly didn't look good. He looked basically like we talked about, Justin and I, like they're going to give him the ball a lot. He's not going to be particularly efficient. He's just never going to really make a difference in the game. But I'll tell you what, Andrew Dalton, maybe a little bit rusty, a little bit nervous in the pocket here and there, kind of drifted into coverage a couple times. but he made up for all of that on the touchdown throw to Tyler Boyd to give them a 7-3 lead, which would be the winning score, turns out. He threw that ball, read the coverage perfectly, and he threw that ball over a linebacker who was sliding back into his zone and between a safety and a corner who were converging on Tyler Boyd. This is like a big-time throw that I'm actually pretty sure that none of the other quarterbacks in our division make, like, most of the time. It was a really, really nice throw, and I think there was like a record low attendance for this game in Cincinnati, which is a shame because it's like one of the nicest throws you'll ever see. Just great football play by everybody. Offensive line gave him a nice pocket, perfect throw, perfect catch from a receiver that's basically a number one level guy. So I was pretty pumped about that, you know? I'm like psyched. You know, good job, Bengals. You did it.
So my question from the other side, basically from the Jets, is do you think that this is more and more indicative based on, you know, Le'Veon Bell's, I don't know, he really hasn't been that impressive this year. Do you think it's more and more indicative of his being the beneficiary of the Steelers offensive line? And without getting too much into a preview of the other game, obviously we can see how it looks like almost anybody can run through Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers' offensive line was very helpful to Le'Veon, and I also think that the Steelers' other skill players were a big part of it too, because if you watched him in his time in Pittsburgh, he was never a big play threat. You know, if he broke a long run, it was 15, 18 yards. You could catch him from behind. So basically, you need to be able to sustain drives for him to accumulate carries and accumulate those yards in big games, because he's not going to be Chris Johnson or whatever and run a 65-yard touchdown that'll carry that stat load. So the Jets aren't as good at that. And so I think that even when Le'Veon Bell looks good, and he caught a couple screens, you know, he got outside a couple times and ran like for 11 yards on a carry, but the Jets couldn't sustain a drive and kind of keep coming back to him successfully. So I think some of it's the offensive line and some of it's the lack of other dependable skill players around him.
Yeah, definitely. Like Sam Darnold really doesn't have much of anybody to help him out, whether it's from you know, receivers or offensive line. He was sacked 4 times in this game by the Bengals D-line, which we talked about a little bit in the preview as far as, you know, was that aggressive D-line against a bad O-line going to be what, you know, takes the Jets down? And I mean, maybe it was. It turns out probably so.
Yeah, 3 of those sacks were from one Carlos Dunlap, who just wreaked havoc on both the Jets and his in-team rival, Geno Atkins, who he passed for the official all-time sacks lead for the Bengals. His own teammate, 3 sacks. The second sack is what did it. The third one, just to let him know he's serious.
A little insurance.
That's right. So definitely a huge game from Carlos Dunlap. I have a feeling that he might come up later in the podcast. The Bengals probably played their most complete game, which is hilarious because there were so many bungles. On their second scoring drive, CJ Uzama dropped, I would call it a WTF drop. Like, what are you doing? Like, it was the easiest touchdown in the world. Later in the game, Eifert dropped a TD. They both had good games, too. They made a bunch of third down catches, particularly Uzama. Like, even on the next drive, I was like, dude, these guys are so silly. And, like, Auden Tate had a block in the back that negated, like, a crazy awesome mix-and screen. Like, they could have won this game 40-6. Like, they really could have. Jesse Bates wasn't tackling at all, which sucks because all I do is talk about how he's their best linebacker. Come on, Jesse. Back me up here. Come on. Trying to talk good about your team and you. Arm tackling frickin' Le'Veon and whoever he was around. So I was really disappointed in the Jets. Like, how did they score 35 points in 3 straight games and then look like this? This was like not a pretty football game to watch. The Bengals were definitely the better team, but yike.
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget also like a big difference watching this game compared to the last several weeks for the Bengals is like when Andy Dalton got benched he was like, I'm pretty sure to like top 5 in the league in passing yards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a stark contrast after having watched this Bengals offense for the last few weeks to last week. How much more of a competent professional passer Andy Dalton is than these other guys. It's like the rapport. He was a little rusty at first, but the rapport with Boyd especially, which has been missing basically since he came out. Auden Tate, I think, is their leading receiver in yards. And getting the tight ends involved, like everything just looked like it was flowing a little bit better.
Yeah, Dalton definitely uses the tight ends better. I mean, if they both make, I mean, Eifert's wasn't as easy, but if they both make those catches in the end zone, we're talking about like, you know, because in the beginning of the year we talked about the Bengals have like good skill position tight ends, like maybe not quite at the Ravens level, but maybe close, like between Eifert and Uzama when they're playing well. And Uzama had 2 really nice third down catches on the next drive. That like one was like a tiptoe on the sideline. One he broke a couple tackles to get a first down. So yeah, there's, you know, it was classic Bungles. It was classic Bungles. You know, there was some highs, there were some lows, but it was a good win and no damage done to the first overall pick because all their competition also won. So
yeah.
This is the perfect week. This is the perfect week for Cincinnati. So have your Skyline chili, celebrate, and feel good. This is a good week.
They're really tanking perfectly, for the most part. So until they benched Andy Dalton, like they didn't get blown away by anybody. The Ravens game was Ryan Finley's first start. I mean, they lost by 1 in the season opener to the now 10-2 Seattle Seahawks. 2 weeks later, they lost by 4 at Buffalo, who's like 9-3. You know, lost by 3 to the Cardinals. So like they've been in games. Lost by 7 to the Raiders with a rookie quarterback. Like, so they have something that they're to build on. It's not like the Dolphins where. Excuse me, there's a bunch of nothing. You know, Joe Mixon is something that you can build your Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, like these are pieces that you know that you have in place. The guys on the defense, especially on the line, like they're doing it right, and they'll probably still end up with the number 1 pick unless they embarrass the Dolphins in a couple weeks.
I mean, maybe we'll see. They do have to play Cleveland twice. So
yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying they're going to beat Cleveland?
Yeah, twice. So
Justin's very low.
Yeah, I'm jumping ship, guys. But anyways, that being said, I think it's interesting because it's obviously pretty clear that moving forward for the future, Andy Dalton is your best bet, right? Even if they were to get one of those quarterbacks that's I guess supposed to be picked first in the draft, like is that really their best bet, is to kind of roll the dice and take a gamble on somebody who's supposed to be a first round pick quarterback? I mean, maybe. So I think it's interesting to see what they're going to do as far as from a draft position.
If they don't draft a quarterback, this is going to be amazing. It will be the most amazing opportunity for comedy on this podcast.
Here's the other thing too. Like you're under the insinuation that they're going to get a first round pick or the number 1 pick. Right? I mean, we don't know that just quite yet.
Dude, even if they don't, I mean, maybe if it was like the 5th or 6th pick. I mean, like, I don't know, because Tua's gonna probably drop because of his injury, and yeah, so I don't know.
Tua drops. I mean, all the other teams are still gonna pass him up.
We'll see. I guess if they move beyond like the 2nd pick, it's worth considering. But if they're the 1st or 2nd pick, especially if they're the 1st and they don't take a quarterback, it'll be.
Yeah, I mean maybe.
Be jokes.
But here's the thing is that like quarterbacks, even at like that high of a pick, or even in the 1st round period, are still always going to be a gamble.
Yeah.
Right. Plain and clear. But somebody like a defensive end is generally going to give you a little bit more for what you're looking for. Like what you see from them is going to transfer and translate better than a quarterback. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting. I think we'll see what happens. Maybe Cincinnati does draft a quarterback, and even if they end up with the second round pick, first round pick, whatever it is. But I'm interested. I don't know. I still think Andy Dalton is still a really good quarterback and is their best opportunity to continue to win. Even and he's still got a couple more years left in him. He's not super injury prone, right? He's not somebody that's got knee problems or hip problems or back problems or anything like that, right? So I don't know.
I
think
remember the last time he missed significant time. Yeah,
when he broke his thumb, and then AJ McCarron came in. And then I think he missed a couple of games last year, or the year before last, but I don't remember what it was for. I think it was for his thumb again, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, small things. So I don't know. It's interesting to me. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if they were good at building a team, I would agree with you that there's a case to be made for shoring up your offensive line before you make your big spend on a rookie quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to think of just the culture of the NFL and the fan base. And like this year, there's 2 prospects that are about as well hyped as anyone in recent history. And if the Bengals skip those, like you're talking about riots in the street. Like you just like, I don't know. It'll be, I hope newsworthy. That would be some newsworthy shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be newsworthy because, obviously it's something to talk about. It's beyond expectations, but I don't think it would be. I don't know if there is someone else there that's not at a quarterback position that's going to shore up either your offense or defense that much better. Which their defense is awful. Their defense is 31st in both rushing and passing. Right, their offensive line we know is just terrible. As far as offensive weapons go, yes, they have some weapons, but they still need better receivers. There's all these other positions that they really need to kind of shore up as well. And again, a quarterback is still a gamble. You say, what if they pass up these guys? I mean, of the draft that we had 2 years ago, everybody was supposed to be. This was supposed to be the next. What was it? Eli and Ben and Phillip Rivers, right? This was supposed to be like that draft class, and we're really not. I don't know. We're feeling a little less, I don't know, optimistic about that. But I just think it's interesting because to me, a quarterback still does feel like a gamble. And Andy Dalton is still a good quarterback, and he still has gas in the tank, and he's still serviceable for the future. So to me, it makes me wonder if he's still too soon. Like Joey said earlier, right? Andy Dalton was still like leading the NFL in passing yards, right? Even being behind on these games. So. But we'll see. Yeah. We can speculate all day, but
in either case, they got to win.
Yeah,
and they still are in the catbird seat for that number 1 pick, which means they have the privilege of deciding all of these fun things, which probably give them ulcers and give us laugh.
Yeah. Well, speaking of laughs, gaffs, goofs. Let's talk about the Steelers and the Browns. Let's rip the Band-Aid off, guys. Well, for me at least, I guess.
Well, we had 2 teams with faint glimmers of playoff hopes coming into this game. There's probably a lot of media experts that don't think either team should be in the playoffs, but the facts are the records were close. This game had a lot. There's a lot on the line. And the Steelers came away with a big ol' W. We're celebrating. We got the spirit. We got the spirit in us.
Perfect.
It's a great win. A dominating 20-13 win. Would you say, Justin, that it was over before it started?
Man, at this rate, it does feel that way. It's like one of these things where, and this sounds like such a cliche line, but this, to me, doesn't feel like a Steelers win as much as it does a Browns loss. Looking at a team that has 2 star-powered wide receivers, 2 star-studded running backs, a defense full of names that you would want on your all-Madden team this year. And they just still can't figure out how to win. They just can't figure it out.
Speaking of star-studded defenses, I believe the Browns came into this game with one safety, and they decided to leave him in Cleveland. What was that all about?
I don't know.
Demarius Randall. He's been your best safety all year.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't know. Basically what happened is Demarius Randall was left in Cleveland. So it's not that he was benched. It's not that he just didn't dress. It's not that he just didn't play on the sidelines. Like, they literally just left him in Cleveland, and they're just calling it an internal matter, and that's pretty much all it is. Demarius Randall is, I guess, known for being kind of a fiery dude and being outspoken and having his opinions. Freddie Kitchens comes from the Bill Parcells teaching or coaching tree. So, maybe some heads butt, and Freddie Kitchens tried to set an example, make an example, whatever it was. But I'm not going to let this game hang on that. Could that have been the deciding factor? Sure. Should it have been the deciding factor? Absolutely not. And that's the truth to me. So,
would you like to speak positively about your team? And the way I think that it can happen is discuss the first quarter or so when they went up 10-0. I saw some really nice things out of their offense that obviously concerned me at the time. No longer.
Yeah.
But there's good stuff there that I liked. Or do you want to just bypass it because it's over? And they blew it. They were up 10-0.
Look, it's exactly what we've talked about the last 2 podcasts. It seems like those scripted plays, the first 12, whatever it is, the Browns execute extremely well. Like, they practice those plays so well. They scheme for what they expect the defense to do so well, whatever it is, right? And they execute. And then everything just completely falls apart and they become a high school team again, right? And one of the things that I really want to point to with that is that, first off, we talked about how the Browns have to come out of the half, not only with a big lead, but they also have to be able to come out and make adjustments at the second half, right? Because in the beginning of the third quarter is when the Browns always start to have this huge tip-off, right? But this game, they did it in the second quarter. They said, you know what? Here's to celebrating early, right? That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to bring up that just reinforces the point even stronger, how the Browns just cannot make adjustments at halftime, and that's been something that's plagued them for years, is the fact that apparently after the Steelers went into the locker room at halftime, Mike Tomlin was talking about how the Browns threw a bunch of stuff at them they didn't expect to see. So what he did is he got all the guys in the locker room and immediately started drawing up plays on the board, saying this is what they're doing, this is how they're doing it, whatever it is. So he had figured it out. Number one, he had figured it out, right, which is bad to start. And number two, he used that game plan from what he figured out in the first half and continued to be successful in the second half, which means that the Browns did not make adjustments at halftime. Even though, if they were blowing out the first quarter and they said, hey, we didn't make adjustments at halftime, as much as obviously I would lament the idea, because as a Browns fan, we know that they can't make adjustments at halftime, I'd be like, oh, well, they were ahead, so, if you're doing good, then keep it going, I guess. But, they, at the second half, started doing really, really poorly. And then said, you know what, let's just stick to the game plan. It just doesn't make any sense to me, so.
Yeah, I gave you a chance to jump in, Joey, but you didn't, so I'm just going to celebrate for a minute. Because it really looked bad. It looked bad when the Steelers were down 10-0. They were really not giving Devlin a lot of opportunities to read the field. It was almost reminiscent of a Cincinnati or the LA Chargers game, but not working. And then you get that one free play on the offsides, and Devlin hucks this beauteous deep ball to the sideline, which I don't even think it was bad coverage. It was just a perfect pitch and catch, on a free play. When you get it's just free, it's house money, right? Is what Duck's doing all year, playing with house money. And then I think a switch flipped because the Steelers started pulling out the stops. It was no more just power running game to Benny Snell, like they were going to win 6-3. They did a sweep to Deontay Johnson, and then they busted out the Wildcat for 4 plays. They're like, dude, we just need points. We need them now. We're just whatever we got in the playbook is happening on this drive. And they got that field goal. get the crowd back in the game a little bit. And then, if I'm not mistaken, that might be when Bud Dupree got involved. No, that was when TJ got involved. TJ just mauled Baker Mayfield and then sacked him, and there's like a tackle for loss. TJ Watt was an animal this game. The stats weren't crazy, but they get the ball back with like 2 minutes left, and you're thinking, perfect. The Steelers can't even score with like 20 minutes, and then Duck, he's just Tevin Jones. Who's Tevin Jones?
Yeah.
Right.
But he knows.
That's what I said.
Right.
We knew. We talked about him a little, Justin and I. But perfect throw down the field, right in the middle. Just a laser rocket, as Peyton Manning used to say. And then James Washington again with the miracle catch. It was crazy. It was so beautiful. And all of a sudden, it's 10-10. And of course, the house is rocking. Heinz Field. I couldn't believe it, it was just awesome. And to think it almost didn't happen. It almost didn't happen that Devlin had the opportunity to be unleashed against no safeties. The Browns had no safeties. They should have been throwing deep all the time. Devlin Hodges finished on passes over 20 yards, 4 for 6 for 125 yards. That's incredible. And the touchdown to James Washington. So
another thing that's been really grinding my gears so far this year that Joey has been trying to downplay for me is Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward was like a ball hawk last year, right? He was all over the ball. He was on interceptions, breaking up passes that way, right? But this year he's been playing the receiver extremely hard, right? And he gets really handsy and has been giving up a huge pass interference call every single game. At least one that's just really big, and there's 3 others where I'm watching and I'm I cannot believe they did not throw a flag for that. It's that egregious, and I don't know, man. I can't do it. I can't take it. I can't stand by Denzel Ward this year.
Yeah, did he have the pass interference on Kane that put the Steelers on the 1-yard line?
I think it was the one that put them on the 1-yard line, yes.
Yeah, I remember being really pissed because on the play before that, James Washington made a 44-yard catch where his arm was being tugged backwards.
That was it. Because both of those were Denzel Ward.
Yeah, and they didn't call it, and I was like, "You mother truckers!
Right.
What is going on?" And
right.
then I thought the Kane one was maybe a makeup call because I didn't think it was as bad as the Washington one, but
yeah. So I don't know.
I can see both sides. Joey's sort of right. You got to establish a reputation that you're not cheating, and then you got to cheat a little more to actually be good because of the rules. But if it goes the other way, you're screwed because they'll just call you every time.
Yeah, it's going the other way. So Greedy Williams ended up coming out into that game. Terrence Mitchell almost immediately after made a really big play. So it's just another one of those things of why is Terrence Mitchell not playing? Why is he not the starter? Right? Greedy Williams has made a couple of good tackles, I guess, this year, but that's not what we pay him for, right? We don't pay him that much because he's a rookie, right? But we pay him to not get the ball caught in the first place, right? So I don't know. I guess Greedy, maybe he has some growing pains and stuff, but I'm still a huge fan of Terrence Mitchell. And with this year being the way that it is, we need to win now, basically. That being said, also someone else we've talked about this year, Rashard Higgins, got a couple targets this year, and it's the chemistry was just completely off. They missed each other so egregiously on I think it was 3 targets to Rashard Higgins that it just looked like they had never played together at all. So I don't know.
The one thing that I would be a little kinder to Freddie Kitchens on is that I've been hearing a lot of criticism that he didn't go to the run game enough in the second half. And I think that sometimes when you don't focus on the game, you can lose sight of what actually happened. And the third quarter flew by. And basically what happened is the Steelers scored on their first drive to take the lead. And then the Browns actually ran the ball a lot in their first one or two drives in the second half. It was seven carries maybe, or it was I think he only had 6 in the second half, so it must have been like all of them. But then they went down by another score when the Steelers got the field goal, and by then it was the fourth quarter. So you could make the case that, like, look, the Browns should still have run the ball. They still had most of the fourth quarter. But you can also make the case they're down by 2 scores. Like, that changes what they do now. Like, so I didn't feel, even though I was very happy that Chubb wasn't getting the ball because he's great and he was doing pretty well, frankly. I don't think it struck me as such a bad coaching decision because of the way the game was going. And by the time they actually abandoned the running game, it was quarter. How did you feel about that?
I think that on the surface, it's like an easy thing for us as like commentators to look at it and say, you know, 2 sides to the coin. It's easy for us to say, oh, well, if you have this running back duo, you use them, right? But then it's also easy to say, it's, you know, hey, if you're behind by points, you throw the ball more, right? But I think it's just so much more nuanced and complicated than that it's difficult to really, pinpoint. You know, do we think that they would have been better off giving the ball more to Chubb and Kareem Hunt? I don't know. Probably not, to be honest with you. The run game wasn't really that strong. I mean, it wasn't like the first quarter because that's just what happens in the first quarter. Well, not even the first quarter, the first half of the first quarter. But it really did start to fall off after that. You know, there was nothing really super dynamic going on that would point in the direction of running the ball was the solution at that time. So, I don't know.
Do you think that if either of your running backs had a spinner in their mouth guard, they'd have had more success?
Quite possibly. Yeah.
Benny Snell,
I think
baby.
so. Maybe cool everybody off. Yeah, I saw that.
How cool was that?
That was wild. I don't know. Whatever. Hey, good for him. Didn't it have like a little bee on it too, like in the center?
I don't know. I just know that it was a real spinner. It's fun. I think it was when he breathed. I think that's how
it looked like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty slick, right?
Yeah.
Steelers, they're cool. You want to hop on that bandwagon?
No. But and of course, same problem the Browns have been having in the red zone. They just, can't finish. I will say when the game very first at the beginning started, before it started even, I looked at the sidelines, took one look, and I looked at my wife, and I said, fuck, we're going to lose. You know how I knew?
Tomlin's Aviators.
No.
White on white.
Oh, that's a good one. I did not because of white on white. White on white is cursed, though, if you didn't know. But it's because Baker shaved. Baker's lost like every fucking game that he's shaved so far. And he's won like 4 in a row without shaving. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to shave today. It's like, what are you doing? Why? Baker is like, he's won 0 games after a clean shave. In fact, he shaved 3 times in one game. And lost that one miserably. So
yeah, that was a bad one.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's infuriating, but it is what it is. A lot of the talk has been, and something that we kind of brought up in the beginning, is whether or not Freddie Kitchens is going to stick around at the end of the year. Everybody is on the one and done train. I think Chad kind of convinced me a little bit earlier in the season that one and done probably is not the best idea for trying to establish something in a team. And apparently that's also something that the Browns are in the same boat as. So the Haslams, when they first came in, Rod Chazinski was their coach, or was the head coach. And they fired him after the first year. And apparently they had some pains with that, and they weren't sure that was the right decision. They had gotten some word from other owners and other people in the business that were like, hey, one and done is not really like a good thing to kind of keep establishing as a culture. So they apparently felt bad about that in some light. I don't know, however you want to say that. So it's kind of been coming to that they don't really want to make that mistake again, which is the same reason why they kind of didn't do that with Hugh Jackson as well. So it is most people that aren't just the rabid fans believe that Freddie Kitchens will at least get another shot at the first half through next year, basically, to see what's going to happen. And I kind of agree with that, right? Like, let's see what kind of a turnaround, what kind of a culture that Freddie Kitchens can try to instill, I guess, in the locker room. Maybe, I don't know. It doesn't look like their offense is doing very well. I don't know. Maybe the offense I don't know. It's difficult. I really don't know what the fuck's going wrong. Other than, so we talked a little bit about the idea of like the sophomore slump with Cleveland, and sometimes that happens with quarterbacks. The idea that in the first year you have a really simplified playbook, right? Second year comes along, they throw a bunch more at you and say, all right, like it's time to go. And it's just a little overwhelming. And then third year is when you really kind of start to click and put things together. Unless you're Lamar Jackson, I guess, right? But so we'll see what we get from him next year. But it still feels like such a burn to say that, because it's like that's every year as a Browns fan. It's just like, well, we'll see what happens next year, right? Again, this one being like so much significantly worse, but that's what it is, man. Let's see what there is next year.
Well, that's the first step in learning to be a winner, is that it hurts when you feel like the potential is there to make a deep run. It's a different type of pain.
Yeah, it is.
So congratulations.
Yeah.
On learning the pain of busted potential.
Yeah, I mean, at least like before, like when they lost, it was this thing where you're like tricking yourself every game anyways. You're like, well, I knew they were going to lose anyways, right? But like this year, it's just it was so different. It was different, guys. So I don't know.
There was a couple things I thought that the came out positively. I want to keep this upbeat because we're a happy-go-lucky podcast. So I'm going to have to bring that energy for this game because obviously the Browns shat the bed. We all get it. One of the things the Steelers did really well, and it didn't look like it was going to happen, was tackle the catch. The old Dick LeBeau saying. They gave up hardly any yards after the catch in this game, which is huge because the Browns' weapons are all great at breaking tackles and being shifty. And it really didn't look good either because on the Browns' touchdown drive, they got a tight end named Carlson that I thought I followed the Browns. I don't know who this guy is, but he had Steven Nelson on him, and he made a catch. And he pushed Steven Nelson down, like I think like the way Joey just pushed his cat away from his lap. Like it was like he didn't even care that he was there at all. And I was like, oh my God, we cannot have him guard anybody. I don't know in here. But that was like the only play in the whole game.
Right. It was in like the beginning of the game. It was like the second play or something. I guess he was supposed to be starting over Ricky Seals-Jones, I think, or whoever the starting tight end is. I don't remember.
It was a nice play.
But yeah, really nice he was supposed to be starting over them, and then he went silent for the rest of the game. So, I mean, who knows?
And I just thought that the Steelers' secondary they were really active with their tackling, and they were really active in the run. Mike Hilton was getting involved, helping out on some Chubb and Kareem Hunt runs. Not always necessarily for losses or anything, but just being enthusiastic. Some of those little guys don't love tackling all game. So I thought that was big, and it's going to be, the Steelers defense just has to play so well all the time that to just see that kind of whole team effort in the tackling, and it sounds so simple and stupid, but like if you don't make good tackles, like it kills you. It kills you. That's why Lamar's so good, right? Because he can make at least one or two people that should tackle him miss. That turns 0 to 5 yards into 10 to 40, so that was huge, and I was really excited to see it. Also, you might have noticed subtly that I never talk about special teams. That's because the Steelers stink at it. They stink at returning the kicks ever. You just should kick it. If you're ever in doubt and you're like, ooh, Minka's got a look in his eye like he might pick this next pass off and run it to the end zone, just punt. Because we stink at returning these things until this week. We got this new running back, Kareth White, who we've been talking about a little bit because he had that great first quarter last week. He returned a kickoff to the 40. I didn't even know that there was a 40. It was so exciting. It was a crazy, crazy exciting thing. And Deontay Johnson is returning punts. A little bit adventurous there. He's kind of fumbles. He has one fumble. He tries to one too many tackles sometimes when he's kind of getting piled up on. But he had a couple shifty little returns, 8 to 12 yard returns, which in this Pittsburgh is massive because Ryan Switzer, he just waves his hand and lets the ball go over his head. which is actually pretty good too, because anytime he catches it, it's way worse. So there is a little bit of hope for the Steelers' kick return game. Don't expect it to be average. Just expect it to not be maybe the worst in the league going forward, which is a major step in the right direction. So that was a nice development this week in a winning week for a potentially playoff-bound franchise.
Potentially.
Yeah, it's looking like Steelers or Titans, which the Titans have also been playing like a house of fire recently. So it'll be a interesting last 4 weeks, a bunch of division matchups for the both of them, and we'll see how it goes.
But yeah, let's move on and let's talk about the. Let's get Joey involved in this podcast.
Hey guys.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Hey.
So let's talk about Ravens and the 49ers.
Yeah, there was a potential Super Bowl preview matchup on Sunday. Not my words.
Just everybody
else's. A lot of people's words, yeah. And I kind of feel like we got robbed a little bit. The weather was not great. Neither quarterback, however you feel about their talent levels and their abilities, neither quarterback passed the ball very well. But it was a really competitive game between two really well-coached teams. I think it was a really big chess match between Kyle Shanahan and Wink Martindale. And the Ravens prevailed 20-17 in a game where we saw them have to play from behind for the first time in probably like at least a month. So it was a really fun game, and one of the big turning points came from a player that we really haven't seen a lot of recently, Sam Cook. The Ravens pinned the Niners deep in their own territory on their one on a beautiful punt. And I think it lived up to the hype as far as how good of a game it was. But I really think if this game was played, which the Super Bowl is not in a dome this year, but if this game was played in like perfect weather, it would have been really, really fun. So we can start from the beginning. The 49ers went down and got a touchdown, I think, on their second drive. Might have been their first. Jimmy G hit Deebo Samuel on a play where Marcus Peters kind of looked a little lost in space, and that was a theme in this game. It was easily his worst game as a Raven. But the good news is that the Ravens overcame it. Deebo made a great play on the ball. It was basically just a heave and pray type of ball. It was on like a third down. It was like a third and short.
Fourth and
short. Yeah. So it was a nice play by Deebo Samuel, and the Ravens go down 7-0 in the first quarter. And I wasn't panicking. I have a lot of faith in the offense, and that's a weird feeling for me still. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But the Ravens kept their composure. They didn't freak out and start trying to sling it everywhere. They stuck to the plan, and they saw it through. It was a really good back and forth game. And I think the Ravens showed that it's nice to be able to win these types of games. You want to see them kind of have some trials, if this is what you want to call trials, not win by 35 points.
I don't know how you think Peters is tough. He's such a daisy out there. I don't care. Like, I know he could kill me if he tackled me. I get it. I get that there's a difference. But look, his job out there is to not let people catch the ball and if they do, to bring them to the ground. On the touchdown on 4th and 2, he lost track of the ball and he like lunged and he bounced off Deebo Samuel. Like Deebo Samuel didn't even know he was there. Pathetic. It was so pathetic. If he didn't have 2 returns for touchdowns already, we'd be talking about how he's like the guy that doesn't fit in the secondary. And then in the next series, he made such a pathetic attempt at a run tackle on it was Raheem Mostert, who's not even, he's like, look, he played really well, but we talked about it. San Francisco has a bunch of cast off running backs that all of a sudden are good. This guy's really fast. He's not super strong. He's not Mark Ingram. He made Marcus Peters look like I was trying to tackle him. Now, fortunately, a couple plays later, one of the Ravens, I believe safeties, came on a blitz and punched a really, really nice punch that caused a fumble. And then the Ravens turned what was looking like just another drive where Marcus Peters got embarrassed all the way down in the end zone into a tie game because they threw the ball to Mark Andrews immediately on a... Does anybody get it? Does anybody get it that when you're in zone coverage, Lamar Jackson's going to throw to the tight end in the middle of the field? He was wide open. It's like, dude, make him make the Dalton throw. Make him make the Dalton throw. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, that seemed to be the Niners' plan from the start. They played a lot of zone defense in this game, and it seemed like the plan was to have everybody have eyes on Lamar. Which worked at times. I couldn't.
Yeah, it didn't really work in others.
I couldn't figure out if it seemed for a while they were keying on the running back all the time and just giving up the edge for a long stretch in the middle of the game. And then I was talking to Dylan, our Patriots correspondent, because he checked in with me, of course, after the Ravens gave up. I think they went down 10-0. No.
7-0.
7-0.
Then
after the Ravens went down, he checked in on me because they went down and then they didn't score on the subsequent drive. They had to get the ball back with the fumble.
Mm-hmm.
But I had been talking to him. I forget what I was fucking talking about. Who was I?
You're talking about how San Francisco was defending Lamar.
Oh, yeah. And we were talking about how much they were committing to the running back. And like literally 2 plays later, Bosa got caught like 5 yards upfield from the line of scrimmage with his pants down, and Ingram, broke off like a 12-yard run. So it's just part of the give and take of playing that read option. And Lamar is so good with it. The Ravens run this thing so well that it's almost impossible to play correctly.
I actually thought San Francisco did a good job, and like, look, by doing a good job, that means he runs 12 times for like 8 yards a carry. That's a good job. That's what a good job looks like, for the record. Yeah. That's how we're defining it, because that's what it is. Like, a bad job is 12 times for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. And more importantly than the averages are like the big runs. In every other game this year, the Ravens had at least 1 to 2 touchdowns. The drive was almost entirely like one Lamar Jackson run. Like, it's like 40-yard run and then touchdown. Like, it's most of the field on one play. And that didn't happen in this game. He ran successfully, but in smaller increments. And they did encourage him to throw more, and it was mostly checkdowns, and it did slow them down. And what I think they did, and tell me if you saw it differently, it's actually the opposite of what I encouraged. So I'll admit maybe being wrong here. I thought filter him into the middle of the field, and then what I noticed is towards the end of runs, he tends to lower his shoulder because he's a tough guy, or at least he thinks he is. And that's when you can hit him. Because he's engaging, he's not dodging you anymore, so you get to hit him. But what San Francisco did is that they were able to filter him out. And as he'd approach the sideline, what you always see happen is he just beats people to the edge and turns upfield. But in this case, they I don't know if they like got him to commit to the run early to get him ahead of the line of scrimmage, but the defensive backs would scream up. You saw Richard Sherman do it at least once, and then the guy on the other side, I don't remember his name, and they just dive. And they wouldn't even dive to hit him. They dive to get him to just go out of bounds. So instead of 20 yards, it's 7. And I thought it was relatively effective, as far as it goes with Lamar Jackson, enough so that I actually wrote it down because I was like, this might be how you do it.
Yeah, and it's becoming a pattern where watching in the game, even when it doesn't feel like he's dominating the game with his feet, like in the middle of the third quarter, the announcers are like, "Oh, Lamar Jackson just passed 100 yards rushing," and it's like you felt like he was being relatively contained, and that's just how this year has been. To backtrack to the defense, I will defend Marcus Peters being soft.
Good
because the greatest cornerback ever, Neon Dion, was also regarded as soft and not a good tackler. So I'll throw that out there. And on the strip sack, so that was Chuck Clark, who is probably the unsung hero of the defense this year. Tony Jefferson went out in week 3, I believe it was. Chuck Clark came in, got the green dot, play calling responsibilities against the Chiefs. So he had a pretty tall task. But he is the oldest incumbent, I guess, in the defensive secondary, with Humphrey and Jimmy Smith and these guys. Like, he holds all of them together. And early in the season, there was a lot of communication issues, and Earl Thomas is new, and then they added Marcus Peters, and he's new. And Chuck Clark has been the glue that holds this defense together this year. And I think he probably had his best game as far as like making the splash plays. He was tasked with covering Kittle. However you feel about Kittle, he's a great tight end. And I think he had like 2 catches for moderate yards. It wasn't anything crazy. He was into block a lot in the run game, but I thought Chuck Clark did an exemplary job.
Yeah. And I didn't notice this because I only watched the game once and it was pretty quick over. But if you listen to the film study podcast for the Ravens, they love talking about blocking. And this one's for you, Justin. They couldn't speak highly enough about Kittle and his blocking in the running game. So even when he's not impacting like a wide receiver, which is rare, they were there was like times when he was like blocking his linebacker into a lineman and washing out multiple players. He's just super, super good at everything that the position entails, especially the stuff that, you don't see on first watch through a game and stuff like that. So
he had the ceiling block on the 40-yard Mostert TD run.
Yeah.
He had a good game.
Yeah, and credit to the Ravens defense for kind of figuring out how they needed to bottle up Mostert, because it kind of looked like he was Lamar Jackson for the first half. It's just like 8 to 10 yards a clip doing whatever he wanted. I was like, okay. I thought it would be Tevin Coleman. They just weren't even putting him in because they don't care. The San Francisco, they don't care who's in at running back. Good luck.
But no, it was less of a committee than normal, and I think that they just decided to ride the hot hand.
Yeah,
and it worked.
Smart.
Yeah,
but it didn't work in the second half. The Ravens made some nice adjustments, and again, credit to the film study podcast. Apparently, the Ravens ran their base defense like more in this game than they have for the rest of the season combined. So they brought a bunch of extra linebackers out there than normal and keyed in there and got it done. I am really sick and tired of Sam Cook getting all this credit for such a great punt. I know he's good at punting, and I know he hasn't gotten to do it in a while, so everybody's something really nice. Yeah, guess what? He kicked it to the 1. It bounced straight into the end zone, like straight in.
Chris Moore.
Yeah, it didn't even bounce high. Let's talk about Chris Moore, who, with a cast on his hand, snagged that ball from the blades of grass that it was scooting against and flipped it under his legs as he dove into the end zone. That was a touchback punt. That was not a good punt. I don't care how good he is or if he should be in the Pro Bowl or whatever. It just wasn't. Like, it just wasn't good. A good punt bounces backwards. I think we all understand that when it gets to the one. That was a crazy good play by Chris Moore. And a credit, because it looked like it could have gone sideways, because the play before, Harbaugh had challenged a pass interference, which in real time, for the record, I thought it was offensive pass interference on Mark Andrews trying to undercut.
What?
Yes, it was. He ran underneath the defensive back. Now, in slow motion, it didn't look as bad, but there's no way that's pass interference. And so it's hilarious that Harbaugh chose that time to challenge the unwinnable challenge of.
I mean, you can't go through the back of the receiver.
You have a right to the ball.
But you can't go. It's the one thing that you can't do, even if you have a right to the ball, is go through their back.
They were side to side. He jumped up to get the ball. You're a clown. You're a clown. You think you win a couple games and they just change the rules for you. Unbelievable.
Ugh.
You probably thought that was a good punt, too.
Either way, they owed us that call after the garbage pass interference call on Marlon Humphrey earlier in the game.
Dude, he's a thug. He deserves two a game.
Trash.
He's Denzel Ward with a better reputation.
Another unsung hero for me of this game was Patrick McCarry. The Ravens lost their starting center last week for the year, and it pretty much went unnoticed against a unit that's regarded as the best defensive front in the league. I thought he played fantastic. DeForest Buckner was pretty quiet all game. Eric Armstead's pretty quiet, and that's what you like to see.
Yeah, I have to admit that I think the Ravens' offensive line has gotten better and better every week, and it's a big part of why they are now officially a Super Bowl contender. Obviously Lamar does a lot, but if you don't have a cohesive line that understands what he's doing, it can be worse because he's doing so much funny business back there.
Right.
And a lot of what they do is runs up the middle, runs whatever. So like they do a lot of really nice stuff, and it obviously starts with Yanda, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame, and but everybody's playing really well. It's and yeah. I mean, you had a great defensive front that frankly, and they're great, but so many of these plays are just short dink and dunk, whatever. So there's not usually a lot of time, but on the running game especially, they really create nice gaps so that Ingram gets to break his first tackle after the line of scrimmage, usually get ahead of steam, and it's an underrated unit, which is frustrating because I want the Steelers line to be the best one in the division, and I'm not sure that it is right now.
Yeah, they get to they say that run blocking really, like, the offensive linemen, they want to run block. They want to be the aggressor. They want to initiate the contact, and the Ravens do it better than anybody this year. So,
well, congratulations. Go to hell. Your team's beating everybody now.
Oh, and so this game ended. I said I'd come back to this, not having an offense to trust for years and years and years. The Ravens got the ball with 6.5 minutes left in the game, around the 35 or the 40, their own. And there was just this sense of calm. It was a tie game, so it's not like they were going down to have to score points to win, but I don't know. I just kind of knew that they were going to get the yards that they needed and probably run out the whole clock in doing it. And that's what they did. That's what they've been doing all year, and controlling the football. And then we got to see the GOAT, Justin Tucker, blast one where he blasts most of them, which is right down the damn middle in the rain. It was great. And then he gave a horrendous press conference after the game, but
I wasn't going to bring it
we'll
up.
talk about that.
You know, it's funny that you brought that up, that sense of calm, because for me, and I don't even mean this meanly, it was like boredom. There was multiple drives in this game that I watched, and I usually like, you know, I try to write down something about a scoring drive so that I remember how to talk about it, like James Washington magic catch, you know, Lamar Jackson magic run, Baker Mayfield awesome read to whatever, Jarvis Landry breaking tackles. There was multiple drives in this game that I was just like, this was just a Ravens drive. They just like ran the ball a bunch and Lamar checked it down a bunch and they just got like 8 yards every time and they scored a touchdown. And that's basically what I wrote down for the game winning drive. There's nothing about it that's even worth talking about. I just wrote down like the only thing weird about this Ravens drive is that Lamar didn't run for 30 yards ever.
Yeah.
Like
run the ball. Andrews over the middle, out to Willie Snead. Run the ball.
That's like, I don't even know what to say. This was just a boring old automatic Ravens drive. It was like, and yeah.
I do think part of that, because I do think that they've been less of a droning offense, and they have been very exciting this year. I think the weather really robbed us of that on both sides of the ball this on Sunday, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Do you have any concerns about Hollywood Brown? I noticed that when it rains, he can be covered by a linebacker. Did you catch that? Did you catch that?
I don't really have any concerns.
There's just a new fastest player in the NFL, and it's Fred Warner, who I've never even heard of.
Yeah. I don't know. Bad weather tends to be a little bit of an equalizer. It's no excuse. I mean,
no, it doesn't. Not when you're running a cutting route. It's an advantage for the wide receiver, who's supposed to be the fastest player since Usain Bolt. Pathetic.
I'm not concerned.
He's slow. He's a has-been.
He's a rookie wide receiver, and he does not need to be the focal point of the offense, and it's okay.
Well, I hope he's faster than the linebackers that cover him for the rest of the year, or you guys are in trouble.
I mean, I think he's been fast enough. So the Ravens are officially through what we expected to be the tough stretch in their schedule.
Yeah.
They do have the Bills this weekend, which is a tougher game than I think most expected at the beginning of the year. But they beat the Seahawks by, I think, like 13 or 14. Pats by 17. Smashed the Bengals. Beat the Texans by like 30. The Rams by 30. And then beat the Niners. So the only team that's a legit playoff contender that they haven't played yet is the Saints. And then they lost to the Chiefs, but that's a totally different football team right now, especially defensively, I do believe, than the one that played the Chiefs. So the Ravens are looking good. I just hope that they're still not peaking at the wrong time, but we'll see.
We will most certainly see. I mean, they're going to be in the playoffs regardless, right? At this point, yeah. They're destined. So it'll be interesting to see them progress throughout the season, but also through the postseason. So, yeah, let's start to wrap things up with some players of the week. You guys want to start with offense?
We can start with offense.
Okay.
I'll kick it off. My player of the week is Andy Dalton.
Nice.
He was not super flashy. But considering what this offense has been, he definitely revitalized them. 22 for 37 for 243 yards, a touchdown. It was a solid performance, which is more than they've gotten from anybody else the last month or so. And they got a W, which is what really matters. So in a week where the Ravens weren't as high-flying as they have been, and the Steelers and Browns made a relative mockery of offensive football, Andy Dalton, Let's get it.
Shut your mouth. That's a great choice as a nominee. I think it's important to celebrate both statistical accomplishment and also moments. And just to go back to that touchdown throw, it was just an elite throw from a quarterback that gets disparaged a lot, got benched despite his play. So yeah, it was a great comeback performance for Andy Dalton. And
kind of like a stick it to the Bengals moment too.
Yeah, we talked about that, Justin and I. Was this a revenge game against his own team? Yeah, so that's a fine choice. Justin, do you have one, or would you like me to?
Go ahead.
I'm going to nominate James Washington. James Washington has been the Steelers' best offensive player for well over a month. And if this award wasn't about to be named after Lamar Jackson, maybe he'd have won one of these by now. He had 4 catches for over 110 yards, 111 yards, and a touchdown. But look, I can tell you about 3 of the catches right now because they were moments. The first catch was Duck getting permission to throw the ball downfield. Perfectly timed toe tap. They showed the replay. There was like one little baby blade of grass between his big toe and the sideline when he caught it. For those listening, I'm wiggling my finger to simulate that blade of grass in the wind. Then it was the miracle touchdown catch. He caught it while falling down because he was being dragged to the ground. And that gave the Steelers a tie game with a minute left in the first half. And then the third catch was on the drive that gave him a 20-10 lead. It was a 44-yard catch. He was being pass interfered on that play also when his arm was being tugged back, and he made the catch one-handed. He made huge plays every time he was called upon. The Steelers needed this win against a team that they were angry at and will continue to be angry at forever. And yes, we didn't talk about Freddie Kitchens wearing that t-shirt. You know what? Maybe you think Pittsburgh started it. Pittsburgh definitely finished it because of James Washington, Player of the Week.
All right. Well, you guys got Defensive Players of the Week?
Chad, you want to lead this one off?
Do you have a good one besides the gimme?
I have 2 good ones. I don't know if either of them are the gimme you're thinking.
I'll take one of the good ones then. I'm taking Carlos Dunlap. I think that the Bengals defensive line has been waiting for someone to reach out and grab this all year. They've got a ton of talent. They got a ton of people with a lot of potential to perform. And this is a great Bengals moment too. Carlos Dunlap had 3 sacks. He was dominant out there in a Bengals win. He passed his own teammate, Geno Atkins, for first place on the sacks list in franchise history. But in classic Bengals mode, first place with 43 sacks is actually half as good. Let me pull it up here because I forget this dude's name. Hold on. Bear with me. I think his name's Eddie. Wait on it. This dude for the Bengals played before sacks were actually a track statistic. Eddie Edwards. How did I not remember that? Nobody knows. He unofficially tallied 83.5 sacks. But you know what? Nobody cares, Bungles, because they didn't track it. So Eddie Edwards will now fade into obscurity, even though he actually had twice as many sacks as Carlos Dunlap, who had a great performance today. So perfect Bengals moment where an actual superior player will be slowly erased from the record books. But it was a win and a dominant performance from the defense. Carlos Dunlap. 3 sacks.
Carlos Dunlap is a mighty fine candidate. Justin, do you have one?
I can do a Steeler if you want.
Nope, I've got one. I've got a Steeler, as much as it pains me. Bud Dupree.
I didn't want to do it.
This guy is having such a year. And even talking
I just
about
kept my mouth shut.
Moments and not just statistics. I mean, Bud Dupree, even just bringing the pressure that Baker hit his hand on the helmet, like if you're not pressuring the quarterback, the weird shit that goes your way like that doesn't happen. But he had 1.5 sacks. He had a pass defensed in this game. The homie's on a contract year. And the good news for the rest of the AFC North is that he more than likely is not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler next year. So he'll go and make $18 million a year somewhere else while the Steelers wait to re-up TJ Watt. And but Bud Dupree is having an amazing season, and he had a huge impact on this football game. Took over for parts of this game.
He was really, really good. It's getting crazy. Like I would say at the beginning of this year, most of Pittsburgh was waffling on whether or not Bud Dupree should even get his 5th-year player option, because that's like $10 million. And if you've been tracking Bud Dupree's play over the first 4 years, $10 million is a lot of money for what he was doing. It's a lot. It's kind of like the productivity that I give it, but I don't make $10 million, if anyone was wondering. I don't even make $1 million. So bonkers. He's playing so well at this point that it transitioned to, man, it's going to be a shame that we just have to let Bud Dupree walk, to maybe they should consider franchising Bud Dupree, to maybe they should consider offering Bud Dupree enough money that they don't have to franchise him, to can this defense afford to lose both Javon Hargrave and Bud Dupree? Like, there's a lot of funny business being talked about how the Steelers are going to finagle the cap to keep these guys. Bud Dupree also had a forced fumble on Baker Mayfield that led to a scoring drive for the Steelers. So, definitely a great choice, good moments. The Steelers, it was hard to pick like who stood out, because TJ Watt was obviously a monster, and I think he made Baker not want to play football anymore with one of the hits he laid on him in the first quarter.
Yeah, completely unblocked, by the way.
Yeah. Foolish.
It's all part of the bigger,
foolish.
grander scheme.
Yeah, to Andrew Luck, your quarterback, into early retirement and a life of golf and bliss.
And we can all look back and be like, man, but he was so good.
Yeah. Yeah, a good choice. I think that Bud Dupree and Carlos Dunlap, it's a good poll.
All right, guys. Is there anything else you guys, any 2 cents you guys want to put in?
2 cents. I'm just pumped. I'm just feeling the spirit. This is an incredible football season. There's been a ton of drama. Duck Hodges, can you be more excited about a team? Can you be more excited? They're playing with heart. Mike Tomlin, people are talking about how terrible he is, how he never wins challenges. Lost another challenge this week, by the way. Total joke. I don't know how he lost that challenge. It's his destiny. We're talking Coach of the Year candidate right now. Everybody can't even believe how he holds these locker rooms together. You know what? It doesn't matter if Mike Tomlin can draw up plays, which turns out he can. Turns out he's drawing up plays on the sideline now. Who knew? Steelers for life. Steeler Nation, unite.
Yeah, before this week, I could not have told you if Mike Tomlin was a defensive coach or an offensive coach. Turns out, check on the defensive column, potentially.
Maybe. All right, guys. For those of you who are not actually watching us live, you're missing out because Chad has been flicking a switch on his light up sweater, his light up Steelers sweater. So that only leads to stronger encouragement that you watch us live. 9:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Catch us this week on Thursday. Yeah, it's Tuesday, right? Yeah, Thursday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, where we do the preview for Week 14. It'll be good stuff, good fun. But until then, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out with us. Share the podcast. Tell your friends. Tell your family. We had some good interactions today, but there was just a lot of discussion that was kind of hard to interrupt. So for everyone that did interact, Mike, Jeff, Gary, John. We appreciate the interactions, so keep them coming. Keep them coming. But, yeah, we'll see you guys on Thursday. Take it easy.
Gang, gang.
Okay.